All right, hello class. So we're going to get started in just a couple minutes here. Let me... Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm going to wait just another minute or so, and then we will get started. Okay, so first of all, welcome to class. I hope that everyone has their power restored. I I do at school here, so most of campus is up and running. There are some buildings on campus that I think still don't have power. My house does not have power, but it should today in an email I got. So we'll see how that goes. That's life in Oklahoma. But what I wanted to do today was to discuss the one of the articles that I had assigned this week, and also chapter 9 from the handbook. And all of this relates conceptually to what we're doing with this documented memo, the rough draft of which will be due on September 8th. So the article that I assigned, called "The End of Work," is intended to open up some concepts and some ideas about the future of work, and what we can do within our careers to help prepare for that. So I have a discussion board activity that centers on a couple of these questions about shifts in AI. And artificial intelligence is something that I think many of us first were introduced to in science fiction, and that's often how technology works. It sort of finds its first expression in literature and film and television, and you think of just thinking robots that are able to perform tasks that humans used to do. And certainly robotics have been a part of manufacturing in other industries for a long time. You have robot-assisted surgeries that happen, but the difference with AI, the distinction is that those machines, rather than just doing a repetitive and predictable human task, are able to interpret conditions, respond to those changes, learn from them, and apply that knowledge later on. And the most common place where you see this today is in software. So, software that's able to essentially learn, sometimes through trial and error, just at millions of calculations per per minute or whatever, and it's able to adapt to those changes. So banking, real estate, law. If you ever research something called blockchain, that's really a popular approach to this kind of machine learning. And what the article is doing is, rather than taking a kind of doom and gloom outlook on the future, tries to look at how this is just another evolution of technology, and how we can prepare ourselves in our careers to adapt and deal with that, just by looking for emerging industries, thinking about how it's going to impact our own. So that discussion board activity, which I have in the week 2 folder, discussion board 4, I'm going to ask you to make sure that you submit that by September 1st. So when I post this recording, I will have that up as well. Okay. Now, the other assigned reading is on Chapter 9. Chapter 9 deals with writing in professional career rhetorical situations. So you can really see the relevance for what we're doing. So it talks about a lot of different types of business communication, and some of these are approaches that you currently use today, or software platforms, the way we engage with our electronic devices. So it starts off by talking about texting, and some of the benefits and limitations to texting are going to be familiar to you already. So that texting is not useful for long, complicated messages, but it can get just a really quick message out. And this is useful in a business environment as well, especially if you have a type of job where you are away from an office, or just kind of spread out across campus or something like that. So I know that for me, if I'm teaching halfway across campus, I mean, yes, someone can send me an email, but I'm going to see it more quickly if it's just texted to me. So it's a great way to keep connected. Business texting requires you to adapt some of your other methods, some of your methods to texting from your personal life. So you want to know the recipient, avoid a lot of abbreviations, anticipate unintentional misinterpretation. So any symbols that convey thoughts, ideas, emotions, you want to be careful about that. And avoid contacting people too frequently as well. Don't text and drive. That's good advice for anybody. And then you have email. Now, email is just sort of a ubiquitous part of corporate life today and professional life. Any organization is going to have likely an email address that they give you. You enrolled here at Rose State, you got an email address. It's how the college communicates with you. So email is looks to be here to stay. There are other types of software that have replaced certain uses of email. I'll talk about those in a minute. But in an email, in a professional setting, you want to make sure that you provide enough information that the person is going to know the purpose of that email. If you're wanting them to take action on an issue, that you clearly state that. A couple things I notice when I get emails from students is you want to identify which class you're in. Your professors do certainly get to know you and get to know your names, and they may or may not need that information. But when someone's teaching 5 or 6 classes, if you can just put which class you're in immediately, they're going to then be able to take action more quickly. So, hey, I'm in your Monday, Wednesday English 11-13 course. I'm not going to be able to attend today. Could you tell me what we are covering in class? And then they can just, give you that information. So asking clearly what it is that you want someone to do, that's a big part of it. Making sure you have a subject line. So a lot of this, it's just time and attention to detail that's going to allow you to effectively communicate. Then the book does have a section. The chapter does have a section on memos, and this is certainly relevant for us. Memos they're a type of mass communication within an organization. Also, memos are sometimes written to individuals. So the memo you're writing for me is one of those cases. You're writing a research memo to me. You're reporting on information that you located. The book talks about some use cases for memos. If you ever find yourself in a position as in management and you need to get some information out to everybody to clarify an organizational change that's happening, you can use that to sort of dispel rumors that are going around, for example. Memos have a header, and the sample memo that I shared in our class certainly has this, and it's memo written large at the top. It's just to identify the genre of the document, that it is in fact a memo. So a couple tips to consider: that you want to think about the audience and their needs and expectations when preparing a memo. And you want to avoid acronyms, for example. You're looking for clear and concise communication with no ambiguity. You want to adopt a professional, formal tone. Make sure that you emphasize the subject of the memo. And memos have a direct format, which means that they state their purpose right away within that document. Memos tend to be objective as well, so you want to make sure that you adopt an objective tone when composing a memo. And then on page 109, I do have a sample. This is a different type of memo than what we're writing. This is kind of an announcement of changes to a company policy, but you can see it follows a lot of the same structure, where you write memo at the top, who it's to, who it's from, the date, and the subject. And then it goes through and breaks down all the information. It states it very clearly at the beginning what's happening. Other types of business documents that the text talks about: reports. So reports are documents designed to record and convey information to a reader. These are they're like research papers within a business environment. So you're being asked to research like sales numbers, for example, and then you report that to management, or you give a presentation. Talks about different types of reports: informational or analytical. Informational reports tend to be more factual. Analytical reports involve the interpretation of information. And white papers, if you work in government, this is very common. They are government documents, and the term includes really anything that states a position for proposing a solution to a problem, often to someone outside of the organization. So, like, if you're working for a government contractor, and you're wanting to bid on a contract, and you provide a white paper that shows your proposal and how you're going to take that on. And for verb tense, there are some conventions for verb tense, but the main thing is to be consistent in the verb tense that you use, and make sure that that's clear. So, for example, present tense is often used for any type of scientific truth, that nickel is generally deposited from sulfate chloride, or sulfamate electrolytes with or without additives. This paper evaluates material. So instead of saying evaluated, you would say evaluates. So present tense is often a good thing to go to. If you're describing an experiment and you're wanting to outline findings from something that happened in the past, you then would use past tense. Future tense is for things that are not yet completed. Active verbs. This refers to using verbs that express a clear action, that have clarity in what they're doing. So your selection of verbs is certainly very important. So here are some examples of times to use active verbs. When you prepare a literature review, your job is to describe the work of others in concise analytical terms. Philip Bennett proposes. So that use of proposes lets you know what that person is doing. As you interpret your own experimental work, your job is to explain observed trends. The results of this study challenge. So the selection of your verb is crucial. And so you don't want to fall into vague, non-descriptive verbs. You want to choose verbs that express clear and concise meanings. So if your job is to forecast something in the future, you can see that postulates is what's used here. And as you refer to figures, tables, or equations, your job is to define the purpose of the figure. Figure 4 depicts, so what it's, you're showing what it's doing. And the chapter, I'm not going to read the whole list to you, but the chapter does have a list of verbs that you can choose from. So if you find yourself falling into repetition and using the same verbs over and over again, this allows you to really zero in on some specific verbs that can be useful to you. And the chapter goes on to talk about social media. Social media in recent years has become a really significant part of business life. So you just want to use it to your advantage. Use it for networking. Use it to promote your company or events you attend. But you just want to maintain professional attitude and professional content. Just think of how you're representing yourself and representing the company. You want to just always be careful about that. But I don't think you should shy away from using social media. Some people keep their personal and professional lives distinct, or maybe have separate accounts. You can certainly do that. But it is increasingly a part of the business world. And I then have a section on PowerPoint. I'm going to hold off on talking about this because we're going to return to that for the rhetorical analysis essay. But this chapter does outline some tips for using PowerPoint effectively, how to lay out slides and make sure that the content is clear and also interesting. And the chapter then does have a section on resumes as well. We don't have a resume assignment, but this outlines everything that should be included. So if you are preparing a resume, you certainly can use this as a model. Okay, so that concludes chapter 9, and we do have a quiz over this chapter due this week. So just make sure that you take that by Sunday, and just as a reminder as well, also make sure that you complete the discussion assignment for today. So that would be discussion board 4, which is available under week 2. So I will link to that in an announcement as well, and that covers the article on artificial intelligence, the end of work that I assigned. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up for the Zoom portion of the course. In week 3, we're going to be going over APA, and you have a draft of the documented memo due on September 8th. So you need to come to class or work on different elements of that. We'll have a few discussions next week that will address this as well. All right, so that is all for today. I'm going to stop the recording, and if you have any questions, you can of course email me at any time, and I'm more than happy to answer that. So thank you, and I will see you all next week, essentially. We will not have class on Monday. We will meet again on Wednesday. Thank you.